was born in 1979. Yeah, no, no. I'll forward it a little bit more. No, no, but I seriously, it is to me is a great, great privilege to be able to speak in your church. For those that don't know me, I've spoken to some of you, but I was actually born, not born, but I was raised in Buckeye. I was raised in Buckeye. I went to since kindergarten all the way to until I finished high school. When I say I finished high school, I meant when I dropped out. But I remember. I still remember the address of where I was raised. My mom worked at the time. I don't know what it is now, but at the time it was called Bean Corp. She used to work there. My dad would work out in the fields. We would work in the summer in the fields. We would get the weeds out of the cotton, right? We'd be out there working summer jobs, 13, 12-year-olds out there, getting $31 a day at the time. That's how much minimum wage was. But to the 13-year-old, I was rich. I was rich. And so I grew up out here, and at first there was a lot of promise. I was decent at school. I was pretty good at school. My brother and I, we were involved in sports, and we were good at it, right? We're humble about it, but we'll brag to you. But but we were into sports, and everything was going good. But the one thing that ended up changing is there came a time when my mother and my father started having problems. And right before we went into high school, they got a divorce. They separated and got into a divorce. I was up until that time. I was student of the month every single year. Student of the month. Now, back then it was one person that got it per grade. It wasn't participation trophies like it is now. And so, and so, everything was on track. I was doing real good, and then, but when they left, something shifted. My mom ended up having to go work multiple jobs to raise us, and we were left to ourselves. And so, left to ourselves was not a good thing. We ended up, hanging out with the bad crowd here in Buckeye. And even on the way in, we passed by right there on the road. I was actually with my son, and we drove us up to that house right there. That's what we did on the way. That house right there. People would say they would drive by, and all they see was a house. And so we got into a lot of trouble. And so, we ended up leaving Buckeye when I was about 18 years old, but all the way from all the way to 18 years old, I left my first job was aside from the fields, right? The first real job was I don't know what it is now, but it's over by where the Walmart warehouse is. It was a showroom at the time. I was building mobile homes, and then I actually even worked in Walmart, in the Walmart warehouse. And but then eventually I ended up moving. I had bigger dreams. Wanted to chase the city life. You can understand. When I was here, there was no old Buckeye. It was just Buckeye. It was just Buckeye, right? It's kind of like like for Mexicans, it's not Mexican food, right? So it was. So it was just Buckeye. There was no new. There was no. It was just Buckeye. And so it was a small town, field town, farm town, and so we left. I left, chasing the city life, and so just one bad decision after the other, and eventually, what ended up happening was around 24 years old, I moved to California. I moved to California. I left because in my mind, the problems that I was having here was my friends. And so I left Arizona because of them in my mind, right? And then when I got to Imperial Beach, California in 2004, I very quickly, very, very quickly, I had a friend that was there. He told me, hey, you can move in with me. I didn't know that he had to pay the rent a few months. And so we moved in, and eventually I had to start living in my car. And couldn't even get hired on for 10 jobs. Student loan every year. Now I can't even get a 10 job. And then so I remember crying out to God, saying, Lord, if you don't help me. Now, mind you, there's no religious background, right? We went to church. My mom would drag us to church when we were kids. She left after a while. I don't remember anything. And so I thought I was praying, but it was in all honesty, it was a desperate cry. Yes, because I would in Imperial Beach, there's a little community of homeless people, and the things they would brag, you know, they would brag about the perverseness. They would brag about how they rip people off. They would brag about ripping off the grace of people, people with good hearts, giving them passion, them treating them, injecting it. And I remember sitting there thinking, and I'm laughing off the jokes and everything, but in my head, I'm such promise. And yet here I am. And so I just cried out. See, my dad. So Lord, if you don't have me, have me. And so to endorse the outreach God just gave me. The way I got saved was I cried out to God and I said, God, you got to help me. And then as a going back to what I do, going to get drunk, I see three men in the street. I see three men